From the high desert and the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world's time zones, prolific and covered each and every one by this program, Coast to Coast AM. I'm Art Bell, here to continue to escort you through the magical weekend. It is my honor and privilege to do so. Let us take a very fast look at the world news. Never all that pleasant. U.S. Iraqi forces enter Shiite center. U.S. Iraqi troops poured into Baghdad's main Shiite militia stronghold Sunday. You might expect trouble. They found it. No resistance at first in the one-time Sadr City combat zones, but testing the Shiites' commitment to U.S.-prompted campaign to drive militants from the capital outside Baghdad, U.S. soldiers described a raid last week that uncovered a suspected Sunni torture site and the rescue of two Iraqi captives who apparently had been spared immediate execution because the militants' video camera broke and they had wanted to film the killing. More than 1,000 people gathered Sunday to commemorate the 1965 Bloody Sunday Voting Rights March and remarked on how the original protest paved the way for modern-day candidates to break political barriers. Not good news from Afghanistan. An explosives-rigged minivan crashed into a convoy of Marines that U.S. officials said also came under fire from militant gunmen Sunday. Turns out as many as 10 killed, 34 wounded, as a convoy made a frenzied escape, and injured Afghans said the Americans fired on civilian cars and pedestrians as they sped away. U.S. officials said that militant gunfire may have killed or injured civilians, but Afghanistan's Interior Ministry and wounded Afghans said most of the bullets were American. Two teens arrested after police found a video of them showing children how to smoke marijuana. Good Lord. In Fort Worth, found the video February 22nd while investigating Demetrius McCoy, 17, and another in connection with some burglaries. The white supremacist gang Public Enemy No. 1, there's a name, began 2 decades ago as a group of teenage punk rock fans from upper-middle-class bedroom communities in Southern California. Now, the violent gang that deals in drugs, guns, and identity theft is gaining clout across the West, forging an alliance with the notorious Aryan Brotherhood. Great. Wanting neither coat nor shoes, a fugitive suspected of killing and dismembering his wife was found hiding under a fallen tree Sunday in a snowbound state park after a bitterly cold night on the run. Authorities said they tracked down Stephen Grant about 225 miles north of the suburban Detroit community where body parts believed to be those of his wife were discovered. He was in stable condition and was being treated for frostbite and hypothermia under police guard at a hospital. Just an hour's drive outside the traffic-choked metropolis in Brazil, where President Bush kicks off a Latin American tour Thursday, sugarcane fields stretch for hundreds of miles, providing the ethanol that fuels 8 out of every 10 new Brazilian cars. In only a few years, Brazil, not exactly a true first-world country, has turned itself into the planet's undisputed renewable energy leader. And the highlight of President Bush's visit is expected to be a new ethanol alliance that he's going to forge with Brazilian leader Da Silva. Now, if Brazil can do that, why in the world can't we? We can grow that stuff if we want to. In a moment, we'll look at some of the rest of the news, as Paul would say. Couple of items. The webcam photo tonight is me. Snapped that in the last hour of last night's program. So that's me sitting at the operating position here during the program. Listen, I want to remind everybody, next week I will not be here. I have no idea what will. Some semblance of something, you can be sure of that. I'm going to be in the Los Angeles area accepting an award, which is actually a great honor. It really is. It's a Lifetime Achievement Award being given by Radio and Records, our industry publication. And just about everybody I know in the world is going to be there, industry-wise. And I guess it's pretty exciting. So that's what I'll be doing next weekend. Stay tuned for what will be on. I got this email from Tupac, Arizona, across from Needles. And Cheryl says, look, we've had more wind this year than I've seen in the last 10 years combined. It just moans and whistles. Where we used to get wind for about 3 days, then nothing for a while. The winds here have been daily, I'd say. 7 days, 4 of them are wind advisory days. Just thought I'd add that to the global troublesome list, and boy, is she right. Same deal here. It has been so windy. So I came back from Southeast Asia where I was dodging typhoons, and here we get wind. Simultaneous warming on Earth and Mars suggests that our planet's recent climate changes have a natural, not a human-induced cause, according to one scientist's controversial theory. Earth is currently experiencing rapid warming, which the vast majority of climate scientists say is due to humans pumping huge amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, not this scientist. Because Mars, too, appears to be enjoying more mild and balmy temperatures. Now, that's all relative, of course, and still cold. In 2005, data from NASA's Mars Global Surveyor and Odyssey missions reveal that the carbon dioxide ice caps near the Mars South Pole have been diminishing now for 3 summers in a row. The head of the St. Petersburg Astronomical Observatory in Russia says the Mars data is evidence the current global warming on Earth is being caused by changes in the sun. Now, the Russian scientists' work has not been received well by other climate scientists who still think that, we're the major cause. Personally, I would like to reiterate, it doesn't matter to me. To me, it matters that it is happening. And it may well be happening to, as Richard C. Hoagland has suggested, other planets, and now is being confirmed by others. Whether it's that, a natural cyclical change being produced by our sun and affecting all the planets, we're one of those, number 3, right? Or it's humans, or both. I don't think it matters. We need to begin to make changes for how we grow crops, or we're going to get hungry. From an unprecedented locust swarm in southern Mexico to fearsome hailstorms in Australia to one of the deadliest winters in the U.S. and European histories, world weather continues in a state of extreme violence. This from Whitley Strieber's Unknown Country. The most recent outbreak of tornadoes in the southeastern U.S. generated an unusual major severe weather outbreak from the U.S. Storm Prediction Center. The storms moved across the ground at an extraordinary speed of 50 miles an hour, leaving widespread destruction, at least 20 dead. The third major tornadic outbreak in the U.S. this winter. The previous 2 outbreaks, December 25th, February 2nd, both in Florida. The February 2nd event also killed 20. Normally, tornadoes become more intense as spring progresses, and changing climatic conditions do suggest that extreme storms will be possible anywhere in the U.S., from Colorado to Maine, this year. In Australia, which has been experiencing a prolonged and extremely dangerous drought, summer thunderstorms of extraordinary intensity struck in February, leaving as much as 3 feet, that's 3 feet of hail, on the ground in Canberra. The Australian Bureau of Meteorology could not offer records of a more intense hailstorm in the area in all history. And while February thunderstorms are common in the area, more have been recorded this year than during any previous February on record. This was referenced last night. A former Canadian defense minister is demanding governments worldwide disclose and use secret alien technologies obtained in alleged UFO crashes to stem climate change. Now, remember, this is not just anybody. It's a former Canadian defense minister. He said, quote, "I'd like to see what alien technology there might be that could eliminate the burning of fossil fuels within a generation. That could be a way to save our planet," said Paul Hellyer, 83. Alien spacecrafts would have traveled vast distances to reach Earth, and so they must be equipped with advanced propulsion systems or use exceptional fuels, he told the newspaper. Such alien technologies could offer humanity alternatives to fossil fuels. He said all this pointing to the enigmatic 1947 incident in Roswell, New Mexico. And, of course, in Iran, a country that has been in the news lately, they're having quite a wave of incredible sightings of radiant plasma-like UFOs. This type of UFO was photographed in Ecuador around 20 years ago. UFOs are often seen near nuclear installations, which is why they're sometimes assumed to be sightings of military craft. The famous Roswell UFO crash in 1947 occurred, of course, near a military base that contained nuclear warheads. In the Israel news, there are witnesses who describe the UFO being as big as a ball with a yellow ray and a bright reddish color in the center. They also said the object was flying at a very low altitude and emitted yellow rays. The Iranian news agency FNA also reported a UFO crash last week. FNA reports the crash was followed by an explosion and a thick spiral of smoke. Now, that was mentioned by Whitley yesterday. We don't get any more than that. It just shuts down. Now, if it had been American, something, well, then obviously they'd be jumping up and down. We'd see it on every newscast, as Whit pointed out last night. We certainly would. We're going to go to open lines, unscreened open lines, in a moment. So here are the relevant numbers. West of the Rockies, 800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers, we love you. Area code 818-501-4721. Wild card line, folks, and we have many of those. Good possibility of getting in. Area code 818-501-4109. And if you're outside the country, get hold of your operator and tell her you want to call toll-free 800-893-0903. British physicist Stephen Hawking, who authored the best-selling book A Brief History of Time, will soon experience a brief history with weightlessness. Hawking, who of course uses a wheelchair and is almost completely paralyzed by Lou Gehrig's disease, plans to go on a weightless flight on April 26th. The flight, operated by Zero Gravity Corporation at Fort Lauderdale, Florida-based tourism and entertainment company, will take off and return to a landing strip at the Kennedy Space Center. As someone who has studied gravity, black holes, all my life, I'm very excited to experience firsthand weightlessness and a zero-gravity environment. I was recently contacted by a very good friend of mine who asked if I'd be interested in giving that a try. I think I am. This is a pretty interesting story. You know that I love stories about holes in the ground. A drill will be used to extract samples of the exposed mantle. Scientists are to sail to the mid-Atlantic and examine a massive open wound. That's what they're calling it, open wound on the Earth's surface. Dr. Chris McLeod from Cardiff University said the Earth's crust appeared to be completely missing. This is an area thousands of kilometers across. The hole in the crust is midway between the Cape Verde Islands and the Caribbean on the mid-Atlantic range. The team will survey the area up to 5 kilometers, 3 miles under the surface from ocean research vessel RRS James Cook. The ship is on its inaugural voyage after being named in February. The doctor said the hole in the Earth's crust was not unique, but was recognized as one of the most significant. He said it was an open wound on the surface of the Earth, where the oceanic crust, usually 6 to 7 kilometers thick, was empty. Simply not there. The crust does not seem to be repairing itself. Usually the plates are pulled apart, and to fill the gap, the mantle underneath has to rise up. As it comes up, it begins to melt. That forms the magma. But that's the normal process. Here it's gone awry. For some reason, the crust simply doesn't seem to be repairing itself. The doctor said the research could lead to a new way of understanding the process of plate tectonics. The scientist will test theories he developed after visiting the area in 2001, including the possibility the missing crust was caused by a, in quotes, detachment fracture. Effectively, it's a huge rupture. One side is being pulled away from the other. It's created a rupture so big, it's actually pulled the entire crust away. Now that is weird. Researchers documented 22 cases of chimpanzees fashioning tools, listen to this, fashioning tools to jab at small primates sheltering in cavities of hollow branches or tree trunks. The report's authors, Jill Pruitz and Paco Bertolini, said the finding could have implications for human evolution. Chimps had not been previously observed hunting other animals with tools. Now, I wonder if this is an example of how it all happened. Remember 2001, where they finally picked up a club? You remember that? Is that what's going on here? Are chimpanzees going through a cycle of evolution, creation? Really fascinating stuff. All right, let's do as promised and go to, let's see, west of the Rockies. You're on the air.
Yes.
Yes, hello. You're on the air, sir.
Well, it's about time. I'm me. I'm your old, from K-Don, met you in the hall outside, put my hand out, you put your lunch down, you bowed down, you thought I was going to clean your truck, and you finally realized I just wanted to shake your hands, and you took me inside, showed me around, and then I left. That was about 1990, somewhere along there.
A long time ago, yes. Well, welcome back.
Well, you probably won't remember. You've gone through too many people, but I was one of the 3-minute alumni, and...
No, I do remember. I remember you. I remember you specifically, and you're right. I thought you were going to hit me.
Let me tell you something else. You once said, talking to me is like opening a book at random. Now, it's impossible in 10, 15 years that you could remember this stupid old man, because I am so old, Mr. Bell.
No, I do remember. You're wrong. I remember you. I remember putting down my lunch, and I think I was carrying a thermos, and I put that down, too.
Yeah, you thought I was going to put my head, I was going to clip you on or something.
Yeah, no, I remember.
Well, bless your cotton-picking heart. You've been around a time or two since then. You know how old I am?
I'm afraid to ask, but let's ask. How old?
Should I tell him? My maniacal laugher. Well, I'm 1/3 into the next 365 days. The 20th of October next, I will be how old? 4 months ago, 10 days, and 4th of March, the 14th.
All right, you're going to have to give it to me. We don't have a lot of time. So how old?
95. I'm 94.
94, and you're going to be 95. Well, all right. Congratulations, and a happy birthday, too. Yes, I do recall. Apparently, my memory is quite good. That's a very, very long time ago. And that man is right. He somehow or another got through a door that is normally closed and went to, he raised his hand in a way that just didn't look friendly. And nevertheless, I put everything down, shook hands with him, and gave him a tour of the radio station at that time, KWN in Las Vegas. My alma mater for about a decade. Boy, I was there a long, long time. And that's actually, KWN is where the change that produced present-day Coast to Coast took place. That would be worth writing about. When I decided that we had talked about politics one time too many, 365 days minus an occasional Sunday, we talked about politics. And it just got to the point where I couldn't handle it anymore. I just couldn't handle it anymore. And so I thought, what's going to happen if we just throw everything out the window and start talking about, the paranormal? I've always been fascinated by the paranormal, and I thought, what the hell? Let's just throw it all out the window and start talking about the paranormal. And I did, and oh boy, did they scream bloody murder. And I mean bloody murder until the ratings came in. Then they scratched their head real hard, went away for a while, were quiet, came back, and said, good boy. I'm Art Bell. Here I am, top of the hour. Amelia Kincaid is going to be here. She's an animal communicator, and I've tried my luck with a lot of animal communicators over the years, and I've never been really satisfied. I'm a really big cat person, as you know. Ramona and I had cats for all the years we were married, and I still have 2 of those cats, along with our Filipino adoptee. Oh, man, what a handful she is. She's really something. Loves me to death, and Aaron absolutely loves them as well. So I've had decades now of close-in living with cats, and I'm convinced of many things as far as cats are concerned, and I guess it goes across board to all animals. I'm convinced they have souls. I'm convinced they have the emotions that we do, every single last one of them. Jealousy, envy, joy, sadness, depression, all of it. That's cats. And so I think it's going to be an interesting night. Amelia Kincaid is one of the top 100 psychics in America, and has been so named, and really claims that she can talk to animals. Now, I've got my own feelings about that. I think it is indeed possible to speak with animals, certainly to communicate with them. I do it on a kind of a regular basis, probably not to the degree that she does. So it's going to be a very interesting night. How many of the rest of you think that animals have souls, that animals are every bit as sentient as we are, as conscious as we are? We'll be right back. Well, all right, remember, when I answer the phone, turn your radio off right away, or you'll sound confused on the air. And I know you don't want that, because you're going to be X number of seconds behind real time. It's a sort of time travel, so that if something is said that's, not airable, we push a little button and you disappear. And speaking of that, the more interesting you are, the more time you're going to get on the air. So try and make it a good call. You're on the wildcard line. You're on the air. Good morning. It's good static.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, this is Harry calling from South Texas.
Hey, Harry.
Hey, I wanted to report a really large fireball or bolide that came down Thursday, March 2nd. My wife and I were sitting in the backyard, and it was about 10:30 at night. In fact, we were listening to your show about red elk. I had recorded it, and I'm sorry, it wasn't your show. It was another show about red elk. But anyway, we're sitting out there listening to it, and we both saw it come down. It was started out as a reddish color and came down for about 2 or 3 seconds. Strong yellow tail, and then it exploded into a very large green fireball, but it was perfectly round. The green fireball was about, I'd say, a little bit larger than the size of the moon, so that would be about 40 arc seconds. I'm sorry, 40 arc minutes. Very large.
Harry, as I said yesterday, Harry, you can't really call a UFO a flying saucer, unless you actually see a saucer hovering or on the ground. On the other hand, you can't call a meteorite unless you find a smoking rock somewhere on the ground. So
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, we're never sure
I've
exactly.
Seen something like that one time before. If I could I relate to you what I saw in 1978 and see if you had ever heard of this before?
Try me.
In 78, I was leaving my apartment, and I heard a whooshing sound in the air. I was walking under the oak trees. When I got to the clearing in the parking lot, I looked up, and directly above me was a large ring. At the time, I called it a ring of fire, but it really wasn't like fire because the outer edges were perfectly smooth, and it was like a neon blue, dark blue glowing. Now we use the term plasma a lot, so now I'd say that's the best description. But what was really odd, it was directly over me, And at first I wanted to go get somebody to witness it with me, but I was overwhelmed with this feeling, hey, I'm going to stay here and witness this. And
That's right.
And frankly, I got this feeling if I'm going to go someplace, I'm ready to go. Anyway, I stood there for a while. It hovered over me. You could see the stars inside the ring of plasma. And there was nothing there. You can't really judge height, but I'd say probably about 800 feet in the air and probably about the size of an aircraft carrier.
Okay, let me stop you there, Harry, and let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Let's assume for a second that had indeed been a spacecraft, and you were offered a ride on it. And
yes.
But there was one aspect of the ride that, and here it is. You can come with us. You're going to be going to a different planetary system. You're going to have a whole new life, but you're not coming back. Still want to go?
At the time, I really felt like I would. That's what was holding me there, and it was really strange because it hovered over me, and then it took off towards a power plant a couple of miles away, came directly back to me, hovered again off to the side, and then went off towards the airport and disappeared up into the sky. But I went upstairs to tell my wife about it, and when I opened the door of the apartment, she's hollering my name in a fearful tone. And I go into the bedroom and I say, honey, what's the matter? She says, I had this terrible feeling that I was being watched. Just terrible feeling. And I told her what had happened, so we've never really figured out what that was all about. I know I saw it, and it cannot be explained. Like I said, it was a large ring, hollow in the center. You could see through it. It was a neon blue.
Got it.
That pulsated around the edges like a wave. And so that's my story. I witnessed it in '78. I don't know what it was, and
I don't know. All I can say, as we say to everybody else, is welcome to the club. Who knows what you saw? Who knows what it was? All I know is that these things are appearing to millions and millions and millions of people around the world. Millions of Americans. We could sit here taking, guess what I saw, art calls for, as long as I could sit on the air and take calls. And so there's nobody that's going to tell me that there's not something going on. I don't know what it is. I don't know who knows about it, what their intent is, or any of the rest of it. I just know it really is going on. And that's what propels interest in this topic and keeps it going. It's really amazing. West of the Rockies, you are on the air. Hello.
Art Bell.
Yes, sir.
This is Tom in Western Colorado, sir. You don't have any idea what an honor it is for me to be speaking to you tonight.
Glad to have you on the air, Tom. What's up?
For years I've wanted to relate a story to you. In 1994, I had a dream, I guess. When I woke up the next morning, we'll put it this way, that it felt like it had been a dream. At the time, I wasn't sure at the time whether I was dreaming or not.
Okay, what was it?
Well, around midnight, I woke up to my father standing outside my door. I was in high school, and he had asked me if I was ready, and I was getting dressed. I said, yeah. And we went outside, climbed into a vehicle, and began driving into a desert north of town. Along the way, it was about a 4-mile journey to get to the desert. And along the way, there were many vehicles all traveling in the same direction. We got out into the desert, parked the truck, and I was more concerned looking around to see if I'd recognize anybody, because this is a town that I grew up in. Been here for a long time. Didn't recognize anybody. Everybody was kind of making their way over to a staircase that led up into the belly of a massive ship in the desert north of town here. There's many pretty deep bowls and canyons. It's all bentonite clay.
Now, where are you actually?
I'm in Grand Junction.
Grand Junction, okay.
Yeah.
So everybody's walking into the ship. Did you follow?
Then walking up to a ladder, and as we progress up the stairway, there's a woman with red hair kind of tied up into a bun wearing a white lab coat, holding a clipboard that looked like a piece of glass to me. And as I got closer to it, she's working on this clipboard with a pen of some sort, and I glanced over the top of it. And from her side, it was a very intricate, kind of like teleprompter technology screen. She looked at me, noticed what I was doing, flipped the pen that was in her hand around, touched my neck with it. And the next thing that I remember, I'm standing in a room. My father, who had been behind me, was now standing in front of me, handing me a shirt and a pair of pants.
Did your father have any recollection of this at all? And did you tell him about it?
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever. And I didn't mention anything to him for probably a year after the fact.
Oh, he'd probably remember that.
Maybe.
If he had a similar dream. I think he'd remember that. Now, was that a dream? Or did something really happen to that man that just he simply recalled as a dream? It's just really hard to say. And that's where we have trouble in this whole field of ufology, in separating what might have been a dream, just a very unusual dream, from something that could have been absolute reality. There's just no way to do it, but just about everybody on the face of the globe has got a story like that. Something similar, something that is just inexplicable. Now, where did a dream like that come from? Normally you would dream of, things you can relate to, things that happen to you in your life or you want to happen in your life. I guess it could come under that category. Wildcard Line, you're on the air. Good morning.
How you doing, Mr. Bell?
Pretty well. Where are you?
We're in San Diego right now.
Okay.
I just got two quick questions for you, and I'll listen off the air. The first one, what, if anything, do you believe is on the dark side of the moon? And the second, if you could please give us, your longtime listeners, maybe some hints to the secrets yourself and Father Amelia talked about.
All right. Strike out on both. I don't have a clue about the other side of the moon, not a clue, any more than you do. Sorry. And yes, I do know some things that Father Malachi and I became very close, both on the air and off, as you can tell, as is reflected by the, I think they're selling or giving away a couple of CDs along with subscriptions to the newsletter, something like that right now. But if you listen to those interviews, you realize how close Father Martin and I were. And we had some off-air conversations. I've mentioned this before. And he solicited my vow of silence and told me some things that I simply cannot repeat. That's all there is to it. You take a vow of that sort, and you've got to, if you're any kind of person, you've got to maintain that vow, and I intend to do so. I'm sorry, I'd really love to be able to tell you, although I don't know that you'd really want to hear it, but I can't. So it's just that simple. I'm sorry. Wildcard Line, you're on the air. Hi.
Hi, my name is John from South Carolina.
Yes, John.
Have a recent sighting last week. I picked my daughter and two of her friends up from school about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're not too far from shore, Force Station, South Carolina. And one of the girls was in the back seat. She kind of had her head leaning over against the window. And she said, there's holes in the clouds.
I'm sorry, and, there's holes in what?
There's a hole in the clouds. And I leaned up and looked out of the windshield, and there were 3 perfectly round holes in the clouds. They looked like they'd be about probably about 20 yards across. I mean, they were perfectly cylindrical cloud holes. I mean, this was real thick clouds, and they weren't jagged edge holes or anything. It looked like something just flew right up through them. And there were 3 of them.
Maybe that's exactly what occurred, of course, in Chicago, above O'Hare. That essentially is what occurred. That craft, when it took off, punched a perfect hole through the clouds. So I'm not sure you could say, I mean, there are weird weather conditions that occur. And I'm not sure you can say that an unusual shape in a cloud is because a craft went through it. Had you seen something punch a hole through the clouds, we'd be at a different level of story. But nevertheless, interesting, but not conclusive. First-time caller line, you are on the air.
Art, I've been waiting to call you for a long time. Finally got through. I've heard someone say before that they were on this planet or in this craft that was green and had like a green atmosphere and a green plasticized kind of thing. Years ago when Sputnik was up in the air, my father and I, we lived out by an airport. We used to go out at night and watch Sputnik go over. What was that, like 54?
Somewhere in there, a long
55,
time ago.
Yeah. We remember seeing these little darting... Back then, it was impossible for anything to go that fast. I was only about 6, 7, 8 years old. And these things would go close to it. Then they dart away real fast in a different direction.
Okay, well,
and even my dad said nothing we had could go that fast
that's right.
then.
That's right. And it wasn't Sputnik. Sputnik would have taken a very, to the eye, slow and steady, straight course across the sky, cutting across the sky at whatever angle it was cutting across. So whatever you were seeing while looking for Sputnik obviously was not ours. We, to this very day, don't have things that can turn at right angles or any angles at all abruptly. If there were human occupants of such a craft at those speeds, you'd be jelly. West of the Rockies, you're on the air.
Hi there, Art. How you doing?
Very well, thank you.
By the way, I love that little hint you gave us into the birth of Coast to Coast when that older gentleman called.
Oh, yes.
That was just charming. I've always wondered where Coast to Coast came from. Some night you're going to have to give us the whole story.
Yeah, actually, I underdid the consternation that was there when I flipped it and stopped talking about politics and began talking about the paranormal. You cannot imagine the consternation. They thought I had lost my mind.
They were wrong and you were right. I'd like to say about animals and humans and our nature,
yes.
I don't believe we have souls. I believe we are souls. We have bodies. It's not semantics. It changes the way you think of us. My dogs here on my bed, they are souls. They have bodies, and their bodies will, I'm sad to say, wear out someday. But they're not. Their souls aren't going to wear out. They'll be with me forever, just as your cats are with you.
Yes.
And, by the way, all my animals, give a shout-out to your animals. Hey, there's the animal communication for the night.
All right. Thank you very, very much. Yes. I guess you could put it that way. We're souls encased in a very temporary body. I'm almost hesitant to... I've never really heard, for example, the voice of one of my cats. Not the voice. But I can look at them, and we both have an understanding. When I'm alone with one of my cats, I can look into its little eyes, and absolutely there's an understanding that passes between us. And this is with all three of my current cats. That would be Yeti, Abydos, and Adali, our little adoptee from the Philippines. So I expect that the next several hours that we spend with Amelia Kincaid are going to be very enlightening. I really feel very strongly about this, and it's something that I've thought deeply about for years and years and years. Our cats are all inside cats, and so our contact with them is constant. It's close, and I have come over the years to certain conclusions about animals, dogs, cats, and other animals as well. It's just that, the cats have been close to me. So when we get back, one of the most... Here I am. Amelia Kincaid, what a pleasure it is to have her on the air, is the author of Straight from the Horse's Mouth, How to Talk to Animals and Get Answers. And the language of miracles. A celebrated psychic teaches you to talk to animals. She's an international speaker and was featured in the top 100 psychics in America. Her unique abilities have been the focus of countless magazine and newspaper articles worldwide, and she's appeared on several national television programs. Amelia's true passion is assisting animal rescue organizations in Africa who create safe havens for elephants, cheetah, and white lions. In 2002, she was honored to accept invitations to Buckingham Palace to work with the household cavalry of Queen Elizabeth II and to whisper with the hunting horses of Prince Charles. In a moment, we're going to talk to a lady who talks to animals. I'm Art Bell. Amelia Kincaid, welcome to Coast AM.
Thank you so much, Art Bell.
Honestly, it's a pleasure to have you here. I've just been dying to do this, and I don't know where to begin. Yes, I do. I'd kind of like to know, if you wouldn't mind, how the very beginning of this manifested.
I had a funny feline you were going to ask me that.
Funny feline.
I just want to thank you on behalf of your cats for having me on the air tonight. I think they were the ones that really instrumented this.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Mm-hmm.
I think so, too. I've got so much to say about them, but I'll hold that. I want to know how it began for you. The very first inkling that came to you that you had an ability that perhaps others have not yet developed.
Well, the beauty of what I teach is that I absolutely know beyond the shadow of a doubt this is a learned skill. It's not a gift. It's a learned skill. It has to do with developing neural nets in the brain, as does any sort of talent where you might have had some God-given talent to begin with. But it's no different from learning to play the piano or learning to play the violin, learning to ski, learning to play football. I mean, all of those things have to do with neurophysiology and the way brain chemistry operates. But I'm going to back up now and tell you in the very beginning, the way this started for me was that I had a very cantankerous cat. I had a very noisy kitty that I had gotten from the Pound in North Hollywood, and I snuck him into an apartment building where I wasn't supposed to have a cat. And every time I left the apartment, this cat would go off like a fire alarm. And this is the opening chapter of my first book. His name was Rodney, and he was an orange tabby cat, what I like to call the Honda Civic of cats. That is a very common model. It's the orange needle-nosed redhead, loudmouth needle-nosed redhead. Mm-hmm. And he got me kicked out of one apartment building and was about to get me kicked out of another apartment building. And there was a woman coming to town to work with my vet. And this lady had the very mysterious reputation of being able to talk to animals. And I took this cat to see this woman. And at that point, I was a complete and total skeptic. I'd never heard or seen a person who could telepath with a cat.
How old were you at this point?
I was about 23.
Okay.
And she so completely blew my mind. This was Beatrice Lydecker, by the way. I didn't call her by name in my book, and I will, in case she's listening. Beatrice Lydecker was one of Johnny Carson's favorite guests, and she actually made Ed McMahon cry when she spoke to his cats. And that was a couple of decades ago, so that was even more controversial than this is now. And she was one of the first people out there really in front of the firing squad saying, of course these animals can think and feel. Of course we can learn how to listen to them. And what Beatrice did in that moment, the first thing I put the cat down on this metal table, at a vet's office where a cat would normally, jump down and hide and be terrified. Rodney looks up at this woman with a look on his face that I'll never forget. Like, as if to say, what? What? What are you doing?
What, yeah.
And she's
staring at the cat. You know, this doesn't make great television. It's not like your eyes roll back in your head or your arms spin like windmills. It doesn't look like anything.
Mm-hmm.
You're quietly learning how to pick up the pictures inside their minds, feel their feelings, feel their emotion, do a body scan, feel what sort of sensations they have in their body. It's a very reflective, quiet, meditative process. So she said to me, I'm asking him his favorite food. And he says, chicken. And I thought, great, you know, I'm getting hoodwinked here. What kind of an idiot doesn't know that a cat likes to eat chicken?
Mm-hmm.
And then she says, it needs to be white breast chunks in a light sauce. Okay, that sounds like him. And then she said, I'm asking him his favorite place to sit. And he tells me that he likes to sit on the back of a peach-colored armchair in your den that has a big bay window overlooking it. And across the street, through that bay window, what he can see is a wooden fence, and behind that wooden fence is a little white terrier. And he goes over there and makes that dog bark. All right, at this point, my jaw hit the linoleum. I mean, I could have fainted. I had a peach-colored couch in the den, and across the street was a little white terrier. And I didn't know that he went over there and made that dog bark.
Yeah, that would get your attention, all right.
Well, she went on to describe what my friends had said to him the day before. That one of them had said, oh, look at those 3 little stripes on his head. Isn't he handsome?
Really?
And described the neighbors. That the next-door neighbor had 2 little girls that were letting him in to be fed, and that's why he hadn't been hungry lately. Which is something I now encounter all the time.
That's pretty convincing.
Yeah, because my greatest honor is to have doctors and vets come to my workshops. And there are so many variables to rule out when you have an animal that's not eating. Everything from a bad tooth to grieving the loss of a mate to stomach cancer to the next-door neighbor has a little girl that's letting him in to be fed. And whatever she's giving him is something better than what you're giving him.
Yeah.
So
what was Rodney's problem? I mean, what caused Rodney to, I mean, that must have been the center. Once you became convinced that this lady was the real McCoy, then you'd want to know, okay, what's Rodney upset about that's getting me booted out of apartments?
It was separation anxiety. She told me that he had come from a warehouse in a very grubby part of Los Angeles where he had to scream in order to be fed, and that the workmen would only throw food down to the cats if they could hear them. And her diagnosis was the last thing on earth I wanted to hear. She said, you need to get another cat.
Huh.
And I went, oh, no. I already have one too many cats. That's the problem to begin with. She said, oh, no. If you get him a wife, it's going to solve all his problems. But this is another thing that is so true so often. If you get a female dog, if you have one dog that's misbehaving and you go out and you get him a female dog, the female dog will herd the bad dog around and say, you know they don't want you to pee on that. You know the humans don't like you to bark like that and wake them up. You're not supposed to do that, but she'll nag him. But I went out and found a beautiful little black and white coquette named Betty. Rodney fell madly in love with this cat and never meowed again at the top of his lungs. All of his emotional problems were gone.
Wow. All right, so at this point, you're a believer. I mean...
At this point, yeah. She had sold me, but I didn't think I could do it.
Right. So what did you do? Get hold of her and say, teach me?
Well, she was teaching a little tiny workshop that was kind of the seed of what I now teach. And I went into that workshop thinking I would be the last person in the world who could do it. And when we actually got into the meditation, I mean, it's a form of concentrated prayer. And I can explain that far, far better. And we actually have the luxury of time.
We do.
Oh, it's beautiful. But when we made the connection to the dog, because I want to answer your initial question, I started taking pages and pages of notes, and I started crying, and I couldn't stop. So she had asked us has this dog ever had puppies?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's so many things that I want to tell you, and there's so many things to talk about. But basically what I did is I merged consciousness with the dog so that I'm in her body looking out her eyes. Now we have far more sophisticated ways to describe that. But in that moment, I found myself in the dog's history. One way to look at it could be memory banks, but I don't think that's really a sufficient explanation. What we're talking about is holographic information, that every living being on the planet is having a holographic experience of life on Earth. They're thinking in pictures, they're feeling feelings, and they have sensation in their bodies. So I went into the dog's experience, asked the question about the puppies. I found myself skimming 2 feet off the ground because I was in her body. And she was in front of a trailer home with an enormous pine tree in front. And I ran over and sniffed a pine cone. And the pine cone smelled better than anything I've ever smelled in my life. And I worked with a dog trainer on the BBC once who said, and this has been confirmed many times since I first heard it, if you unrolled a dog's nasal passages, they'd be the size of a football field. And if you unraveled a human's nasal passages, they'd be the size of a postage stamp.
So you were actually able to feel the heightened, tremendously heightened sense of smell that we all know a dog has.
Right. And then, as her, through her eyes, I ran over to a chain link fence, and behind the chain link fence was a black lab mix type dog. And I felt this incredible love for him. And then I felt a gush of sadness, and I heard the words, "Mother took me away in the divorce." And then I went forward in time and asked about the puppies. And in her body, I looked down and saw an incision on my abdomen and felt excruciating pain. You know, most vets send these animals home without painkillers.
Yeah.
And a hysterectomy hurts. So I felt her pain, and I heard the words, if I had ever wanted to have puppies, it would have been with him. But Mother had to move us in the divorce. And she said, now that I can't have babies, I take care of all the neighborhood cats. Well,
now, the implication of that is, though, that that dog understood divorce.
Absolutely.
They certainly would understand a parting, but did they actually, would you actually say that they understood the concept of divorce?
Oh, sure. How could they not?
Well, I can understand they would certainly be aware of the parting, the fact that it occurred, but to understand the actual concept of divorce is another jump.
All right, well, let's say that here is this animal who's witnessing the fights, the tears, the pain.
Sure.
That were going on in the relationship in the household before the divorce.
Sure.
They're feeling the feelings of the people. So they're already picking up all that energetically. They know exactly what the people are thinking and feeling. I mean, if we take away the idea of outer edges of things, and we start looking at what could be called implicate order instead of explicate order. Explicate order is looking at something and seeing the outer edge, the form. Mm-hmm. Implicate order is seeing inside the energetic field and feeling inside the energetic field. Then if all living beings are thinking in pictures, when your cat looks at you, your head might as well be a television set. They can see the thoughts, they can feel your feelings.
All right, then they have a better defined sense of psychic ability naturally than we do.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the human animal is the only one that's taken themselves out of the chain, out of the harmony of nature, so that we're not aware. I think that what I teach people to do is to reconnect with that awareness. Intrinsically, we all have it. I think that it's more likely that we shut it out. It's so painful that we shut it out.
So you actually can put yourself inside, for example, a dog, and feel yourself rolling along at a couple of feet off the ground, smelling a pine cone or whatever else a dog might smell. So you actually know how a dog feels and what it senses.
And what we call gestalt, the body scan, is being able to go into the body and slowly feeling your way through every organ, every muscle, so that you can discover what's going on physically inside this animal. There's no other way to find out whether it's a psychological problem or a health problem.
Well, right. How's your batting average?
Oh, that's a very funny and tricky question. 1,000, I'd have to say.
In other words, I take it you do consults for people. You get together with the people and their animals, right?
I teach now.
You teach.
So this year, I'm teaching in 12 countries, and I lecture in about 32 cities in about 12 countries every year. So what I do is I bring together huge groups of people into a seminar, and I teach them how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right, let's circle back a little bit. You said that it's something everybody can learn. Now, I talk to psychics and remote viewers and people of all kinds of disciplines, and inevitably they all say kind of the same thing. But then they all also admit that there are people who are natural in these areas, and there are some others that are kind of thick as a brick. And while everybody might be able to learn it to some degree, there are naturals, Amelia. You're obviously one of those, and so you kind of say, well, everybody can do it. I'm not sure everybody can do it equally well.
Okay, I will definitely agree with you.
Okay.
Not everyone can do it equally well, but that's exactly the same as if we went and picked up a book of piano music. And this is a book of Mozart sonatas. So if you can't read music and you open that book, it's a bunch of little black dots. But if you can read music and you open the first page, you hear dun da 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 dum dum dum, because it makes sense to you.
Sure.
And the more you practice, and the more disciplined you are, and the more determined you are, it has everything to do with practice and patience with yourself.
But you can get to the point where you can actually enter that animal, see what it sees, hear what it hears, and know what it thinks.
Absolutely.
Wow. All my life, I've wanted to know, I've spent my time with cats, so, I guess I'll put my questions toward cats. I've really wanted to know what they think, what they think of us, what they think of humans, what they think of their surroundings, what they think of. My cats happen to be inside cats. I don't let them out, Amelia, because we have coyotes here and other things, cars that could do damage to them, and so I don't let them out of the house. They seem quite satisfied remaining in the house. They do love to look out the window at birds and whatever else they can see and chatter their little teeth about, but they seem eminently satisfied with their life. But, gosh, Amelia, I've wanted to know what they think about.
Well, that's the beginning. The beginning is the unconditional love. Here's a crash course. If you were to look at it this way, all living beings, all human beings, are thinking thoughts. We're sending out frequencies into the world around us. So we're all functioning as radio stations. And some scientists have said that human beings think up to 40,000 thoughts a day.
All right, I'll tell you what, Amelia, we're already at a break point. Hold tight. No, when we come back, crash course is where we're going, and that's exactly what I want, is a crash course. So Amelia Kincaid is our guest. She is able to know what animals feel. She's able to be inside of them. She's able to talk to them. We'll be right back. Well, all right. This is one of the best animal communicators in the United States, maybe in the world, a top 100 psychic, but she aims it all at animals, and she's the first one that I've ever spoken to that can actually get inside of an animal, be walking 2 feet above the ground, as an animal would see through its eyes, hear through its ears, smell through its nose, the heightened sense, the incredibly heightened sense of smell that a dog would have. And I've got quite a few stories for her, but in a moment, we're going to get a crash course on how we can do it. Once again, Amelia Kincaid. Amelia, welcome back. I very much want to hear this crash course on how, and I think of myself as pretty sensitive, but I've never made it inside one of my cats. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, a crash course. How can we begin? How does it work?
Well, we have to change our entire worldview. So a lot of this has to do with perspective. I mean, if you're going to have the same perspective that you've always had, it's not going to enable you to be able to move your consciousness in a new direction. We have to look at things differently in order to access different types of information.
Okay, how? Look at things in what different way?
Okay, here's one idea. What you're looking at when you look at your cat or an elephant or a pine tree or a dragonfly is an energetic field. And the latest discoveries in quantum mechanics, this is what's so fascinating. My latest book was mentored by Captain Edgar Mitchell, who you've probably spoken to, the Apollo astronaut.
Oh, I certainly have, yes.
Yeah. Ed might very well be the most brilliant mind of the 20th century. And when I approached Ed, I said to him, I can telepath with animals. Why is that? And I deliberately singled out a man that I thought might well be the most brilliant man on Earth. Ed designed the space station, for those of you who don't know, and walked on the moon, and was a professor at NASA, and is the ringleader of the Institute of Noetic Science. So he collects the most brilliant quantum physicists and scientists in the world, and they talk about things like this, like supernatural ability. Now, Ed is the first to say there's no supernatural. If it's happening on Earth, it's natural. There's no such thing as metaphysics. If one human being can do it, it's physics. So these things must fall within the laws of physics. Now, within that idea, when I said to Ed, why can I do this? He said, oh, well, it's because of a latest discovery in quantum physics called quantum holography. And it has to do with how you navigate through the zero-point energy field. The zero-point energy field is our new name for God. In this idea, we're all within one enormous organism. Everything, if you were to say it's not space between you and your cat, you're not a separate particle. The cat's not a separate particle. We're in one ocean of indivisible energy. And the entire ocean of energy is vibrating like a symphony. Then you could swim out into the energy and enter the energetic field of the animal, because we're going to take away the edges. Now, in implicate order, that cat is a galaxy of light. That's atoms and electrons. It would look like you're looking out into the galaxy. That's a different perspective. So we're looking at this as if it's an energetic field that we can access. The idea that we're all trapped inside these little carbon bodies is yesterday's news. I mean, what we're discovering now with non-locality is that we can reach out into the world around us with our minds, and that we are basically all cells in the body of God. So
I think I agree with you, and I'm pretty much aware of all of that. I've been doing a lot of research into consciousness myself, so I'm with you all the way there. I'm interested in the actual practical steps, whether it's a mental discipline that you begin with, how you start this out.
It's a mental and an emotional discipline. So let's say that you're operating like a radio station, and you're sending out those 40,000 impulses into the world around you, and you're singing a particular song, and that's the vibratory rate that you send out into the world around you. So you're creating this wave of energy. That wave of energy has a rhythm. Your thinking process has a rhythm. Now, most people have a very volatile, maybe even negative thinking process, or at least it's extremely busy. Mm-hmm. For all the people out there that are thinking, oh, I've got to go pick up the kids after school, and then I've got to drop this off, I've got to get the tire fixed, and blah, 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 I've got to make my taxes, blah, blah, blah. It's loud. Now, a cat is going to be on a different frequency. And every animal, it's not that all cats are on the same frequency and all elephants are on the same frequency. Every single being is individual. But it's as if they were different channels on a radio station. So what I teach people to do, in order for you to tune into a different channel so that you could hear, what is my horse needing right now? What is he trying to tell me?
Right.
You would have to turn your program off. Now, this is where we get into the meditative process. And this is a very Buddhist idea, although it kind of transcends all religions. If you were able to turn your thinking process off, and you don't have to sit in silence for hours, you have to be able to turn it off for a second and turn off your emotions. So whatever it was that you were feeling, I teach my students to move down. So you're moving into a deeper part of your body, literally, so that your identification is in your heart, not in your head.
Okay.
That first direction, down. Or to think about the bottoms of your feet and how your body connects to gravity. You're moving yourself out of that very busy head where we get ourselves into so much trouble. Then moving your focus back into your spinal column. Just to think about your spinal column as being this beautiful matrix of sparkling light with spinal fluid, like billions of stars moving up and down your spinal column.
Okay.
We move you back out of your emotional body. So now you're in your soul. You're in the spirit and the essence that you were before you came into this physical body and what you're going to take with you when you leave. So that it's a consciousness of connecting to the God within you. And when you're in that sacred, silent space, there's no space, there's no time. There's no separation. So you're moving into the most silent, beautiful, harmonious, peaceful, grateful energy that you could ever imagine. Okay. And from there, you send out love to the cat. And you literally form a bridge of energy between your heart and the cat's heart. You already have that with both of your cats.
3. I have 3 cats.
Oh, 3 cats. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I've got kind of a story for you, Amelia. My wife, Ramona, died. And actually, you know, my cats at that time were about the only thing that kept me alive, if you want to know the truth. And so I spent a lot of time with them, curled up with them, and they kept me alive. I mean, I came as close to communicating. Some interesting things happened. They did keep me alive, Amelia. And
they saved your life, didn't they?
Yeah, they did save my life. Absolutely. No question about it. They saved my life. And I couldn't leave them alone. Had it not been for the cats, I would have been alone, and I wouldn't be here now. I can guarantee you. So we stayed very close, curled up, cried a lot. Just, you know, all the big questions of the universe came to me, and it was, I can't even describe it, actually. And then months later, I ended up going to the Philippines, where I met a woman. And before I left, I had these long heart-to-heart talks with my cats, and I promised them they were coming. They were going to come with me, period. They were not going to be abandoned. Boy, I just really laid it on them, and it worked. It worked in the sense that they came without difficulty. They didn't go berserk. It's as if they understood what was happening. And then when I returned to America, I went through the exact same thing. And boy, did they understand what was going on. They understood the packing. They understood what was about to happen. They understood when the cat carriers, we used actually, transporting my cats was more expensive than transporting myself by a large margin. We used this wonderful door-to-door service, and they understood what was happening.
Oh, of course they did.
I had these long talks with them, and for example, Yeti, who's a very bright cat, he would just sit there and stare into my eyes as I told him what was going to happen and promised him that there's no way on God's green earth he was going to be abandoned. And he'd be with me the whole time. I promise. Boy, you could look into his eye, you could look into his soul, and you could understand that he understood, as did Abydos. And then on the return trip, we adopted a little cat in Manila, a little street cat in Manila. Boy, what a joy she is, and brought her back. And she is so close to... Anyway, I'm just rattling on here, but I had these long discussions with my cats, and I know they understood. They grieved with me. They understood when I took them away.
Do you
they
know
understood
what
when I brought them back.
Arrogant idea it is that human monkeys have come up with, that we're so much more intelligent than all the other living beings on this planet? I mean, that's the other enormous paradigm shift that we have to make.
Well, we can talk.
Is that we have to eliminate the idea that we're somehow more intelligent? I don't think so.
Well, we can talk. We have the ability to vocalize as you and I are right now. Other than that,
birds have the ability to talk, especially mockingbirds. If we were going to single out an animal that can communicate better within its species, ants. Ants can communicate better and have the most harmonious society of almost any other species on this planet. What about termites? I mean, how do they communicate with each other when they're creating some piece of architecture that is beyond our wildest dreams? They have to say, hey, Bob, would you go pick up that block and bring it over here? Because I'm building a pyramid. I mean, of course they can communicate. Lions hunt in telepathic formation. All animals can speak to each other. The only one that's gotten bumped out of the chain is us, because we're so obsessed with ourselves that we're just not open to communing.
Well, I believe that. Our minds are so busy with the needs of the world.
Nonsense. Human nonsense. And one of the things that I teach, and it's so counter to the bestsellers in America, you don't need to have the bazillion dollars. You don't need to have the soulmate. You can look into the eyes of your cat or your dog or your horse and understand it doesn't get any better than this. There's somebody right there that needs your love and your compassion and your understanding. And I am so utterly filled with joy. I mean, every time I look at my cat, I think my heart's going to explode. And is it not proof that God exists? That something created these animals. Something created this harmony and order and beauty, this symmetry, the poetry of a cat. I think they're Mother Nature's masterpiece. I'm sorry for all the dog listeners out there, but I finally had to come clean with that, and I get asked that all over the world.
Well, I agree with you. And I too, serve up apologies to the dog lovers. There are many out there, and I'm sure they have their own fan club. But for me, it's cats, and they're just such special animals. So, in other words, like many other disciplines, like remote viewing and many other things, you quiet your mind. But you say then just go down. Let your
into what we're talking about. I mean, it seemed like a segue, but it wasn't.
No, I'm going to try this, so I want to really understand it. You let your consciousness go down. You said
into your heart.
Yeah, into your heart.
Getting as silent, as quiet, as reverent as you possibly can, then I reach out to God, Goddess, all that is, into the universe itself with a sense of gratitude, knowing that we are all one, that the cells within the body of God should be able to communicate with each other, and they can. And then you reach out toward that animal. So it's heart, God, animal.
So at the point that you get yourself isolated, as it were, and all of the world around you has gone away, you can then reach out only with intent to a specific animal.
Mm-hmm. And it's what we're talking about. When you are so blown away by the beauty, by the love that you feel, the reverence for that animal that you love more than any other creature in the world, you're completely present. So what this is about is concentration, it's respect, being so completely present in the moment.
Amelia, is it like an OBE?
It is, because this is the same thing as remote viewing. It's a form of remote viewing.
All right, well, there have always been certain...
You can leave your body and go into the body of the animal. There's no other way to do a medical scan except to leave your body.
Okay, how do you get past the fear part? I had one spontaneous OBE, but I've had several near OBEs, and there's a certain threshold that you've got to get past to make that jump. And there's a little bit of fear associated with it. I mean, when you leave your body and or enter the body of another, there's some fear associated with that. Mm-hmm. How do you get past that?
It's your love for them. If you're watching your cat dream and you're wondering, what is she thinking?
Yes.
And you're so enamored with the beauty of this cat, and you're looking at her whiskers and her fur and smelling her breath and her... And then the love overtakes the fear. And one of the things that I also teach in the workshops is that you might not necessarily need to go into the body of the animal, because you're going to feel their pain. And if we're exploring a question that's really painful, my students are going to get in there. They're going to feel that backache. They're going to feel that toothache. They're going to feel that grief. And it can be very overwhelming.
Right.
And they may go home that night and throw up. I'm sorry to say, it happens a lot. Or they walk out with the lamb's toothache. So let's say that you stay anchored in your body, and you're sitting in that beautiful frequency that is your own spirit, the most sacred acknowledgement of the God within you. So what's happening now basically is not that you're communicating with the animal. The God within you is communicating to the God within them. Or even better said, you're listening to the God within them. So it's not scary if you're staying in your own body. And what I teach is to get in there like a fireman. A fireman doesn't go in to get burned. A fireman goes in to locate the problem and then pull out as fast as you can.
As safely as you can, yes.
So you don't get burned. You get back into that column of light in your own spinal column that's connected and grounded to the earth. And from that place, you can start troubleshooting. And you can start sending out love. And you can start figuring out, how can I help? How can I heal? What can I do to bring more comfort?
Is the animal, in this case a cat, aware that you are now in a mode of communication with this animal that you've never been before? In other words, is it aware that suddenly a channel of communication is open that's never been open before?
Yes. Yeah, and this is it's an advanced question, and it's a fascinating question. And it's something that there's that music again.
Yeah.
I'll hold this thought.
Okay, we'll come right back to it. It is an interesting question. In other words, I guess we're both humans and animals aware of each other in a peripheral way. But when you get to that depth of communication, is the animal aware? Good morning, everybody. Amelia Kincaid is my guest. She's one of the best psychics in the U.S. She's one of the best animal communicators in the world. And we're getting a few secrets tonight, kind of a crash course on how to do it yourself, and it's well worth giving a try. I've been listening very closely, and I can assure you I'm going to give it a try. Forging an alliance with the notorious Aryan Brotherhood. Great. Wanting neither coat nor shoes, a fugitive suspected of killing and dismembering his wife was found hiding under a fallen tree Sunday in a snowbound state park after a bitterly cold night on the run. Authorities said they tracked down Stephen Grant about 225 miles north of the suburban Detroit community where body parts believed to be those of his wife were discovered. He was in stable condition and was being treated for frostbite and hypothermia under police guard at a hospital. Just an hour's drive outside the traffic-choked metropolis in Brazil, where President Bush kicks off a Latin American tour Thursday, sugarcane fields stretch for hundreds of miles, providing the ethanol that fuels 8 out of every 10 new Brazilian cars. In only a few years, Brazil, not exactly a true first world country, has turned itself into the planet's undisputed renewable energy leader. And the highlight of President Bush's visit is expected to be a new ethanol alliance that he's going to forge with Brazilian leader Da Silva. Now, if Brazil can do that, why in the world can't we? We can grow that stuff if we want to. In a moment, we'll look at some of the rest of the news, as Paul would say. Couple of items. The webcam photo tonight is me. Snapped that in the last hour of last night's program. So that's me sitting at the operating position here during the program. Listen, I want to remind everybody, next week I will not be here. I have no idea what will. Some semblance of something, you can be sure of that. I'm going to be in the Los Angeles area accepting an award, which is actually a great honor. It really is. It's a Lifetime Achievement Award being given by Radio and Records, our industry publication. And just about everybody I know in the world is going to be there, industry-wise. And I guess it's pretty exciting. So that's what I'll be doing next weekend. Stay tuned for what will be on. I got this email from Tupac, Arizona, across from Needles. And Cheryl says, look, we've had more wind this, leaving widespread destruction, at least 20 dead. The third major tornadic outbreak in the U.S. this winter. The previous two outbreaks, December 25th, February 2nd, both in Florida. The February 2nd event also killed 20. Normally, tornadoes become more intense as spring progresses, and changing climatic conditions do suggest that extreme storms will be possible anywhere in the U.S., from Colorado to Maine this year. In Australia, which has been experiencing a prolonged and extremely dangerous drought, summer thunderstorms of extraordinary intensity struck in February, leaving as much as 3 feet, that's 3 feet of hail, on the ground in Canberra. The Australian Bureau of Meteorology could not offer records of a more intense hailstorm in the area in all history. And while February thunderstorms are common in the area, more have been recorded this year than during any previous February on record. This was referenced last night. A former Canadian defense minister is demanding governments worldwide disclose and use secret alien technologies obtained in alleged UFO crashes to stem climate change. Now, remember, this is not just anybody. It's a former Canadian defense minister. He said, quote, I'd like to see what alien technology there might be that could eliminate the burning of fossil fuels within a generation. That could be a way to save our planet, said Paul Hellyer, 83. Alien spacecrafts would have traveled vast distances to reach Earth, and so they must be equipped with advanced propulsion systems or use exceptional fuels, he told the newspaper. Such alien technologies could offer humanity alternatives to fossil fuels. He said all this pointing to the enigmatic 1947 incident in Roswell, New Mexico. And, of course, in Iran, a country that has been in the news lately, they're having quite a wave of incredible sightings of radiant plasma-like UFOs. This type of UFO was photographed in Ecuador around 20 years ago. UFOs are often seen near nuclear installations, which is why they're sometimes assumed to be sightings of military craft. The famous Roswell UFO crash in 1947 occurred, of course, near a military base that contained nuclear warheads. In the Israel news, there are witnesses who from the high desert and the great American Southwest. I bid you all good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be in the world's time zones, prolific and covered each and every one by this program, Coast to Coast AM. I'm Art Bell, here to continue to escort you through the magical weekend. It is my honor and privilege to do so. Let us take a very fast look at the world news. Never all that pleasant. U.S. Iraqi forces enter Shiite center. U.S. Iraqi troops poured into Baghdad's main Shiite militia stronghold Sunday. You might expect trouble. They found it. No resistance at first in the one-time Sadr City combat zones, but testing the Shiites' commitment to U.S.-prompted campaign to drive militants from the capital outside Baghdad, U.S. soldiers described a raid last week that uncovered a suspected Sunni torture site and the rescue of 2 Iraqi captives who apparently had been spared immediate execution because the militants' video camera broke and they had wanted to film the killing. More than 1,000 people gathered Sunday to commemorate the 1965 Bloody Sunday Voting Rights March and remarked on how the original protest paved the way for modern-day candidates to break political barriers. Not good news from Afghanistan. An explosives-rigged minivan crashed into a convoy of Marines that U.S. officials said also came under fire from militant gunmen Sunday. Turns out as many as 10 killed, 34 wounded, as a convoy made a frenzied escape, and injured Afghans said the Americans fired on civilian cars and pedestrians as they sped away. U.S. officials said that militant gunfire may have killed or injured civilians, but Afghanistan's Interior Ministry and wounded Afghans said most of the bullets were American. 2 teens arrested after police found a video of them showing children how to smoke marijuana. Good Lord. In Fort Worth. Found the video February 22nd while investigating Demetrius McCoy, 17, and another in connection with some burglaries. The white supremacist gang Public Enemy No. 1, there's a name, began 2 decades ago as a group of teenage punk rock fans from upper-middle-class bedroom communities in Southern California. Now, the violent gang that deals in drugs, guns, and identity theft is gaining clout across the West here that I've seen in the last 10 years combined. It just moans and whistles. Where we used to get wind for about 3 days, then nothing for a while. The winds here have been daily, I'd say. 7 days, 4 of them are wind advisory days. Just thought I'd add that to the global troublesome list, and boy, is she right. Same deal here. It has been so windy. So I came back from Southeast Asia where I was dodging typhoons, and here we get wind. Simultaneous warming on Earth and Mars suggests that our planet's recent climate changes have a natural, not a human-induced cause, according to one scientist's controversial theory. Earth is currently experiencing rapid warming, which the vast majority of climate scientists say is due to humans pumping huge amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, not this scientist. Because Mars, too, appears to be enjoying more mild and balmy temperatures. Now, that's all relative, of course, and still cold. In 2005, data from NASA's Mars Global Surveyor and Odyssey missions reveal that the carbon dioxide ice caps near the Mars South Pole have been diminishing now for 3 summers in a row. The head of the St. Petersburg Astronomical Observatory in Russia says the Mars data is evidence the current global warming on Earth is being caused by changes in the sun. Now, the Russian scientists' work has not been received well by other climate scientists who still think that, we're the major cause. Personally, I would like to reiterate, it doesn't matter to me. To me, it matters that it is happening. And it may well be happening to, as Richard C. Hoagland has suggested, other planets, and now is being confirmed by others. Whether it's that, a natural cyclical change being produced by our sun and affecting all the planets, we're one of those, number 3, right? Or it's humans, or both. I don't think it matters. We need to begin to make changes for how we grow crops, or we're going to get hungry. From an unprecedented locust swarm in southern Mexico to fearsome hailstorms in Australia to one of the deadliest winters in the U.S. and European histories, world weather continues in a state of extreme violence. This from Whitley Strieber's Unknown Country. The most recent outbreak of tornadoes in the southeastern U.S. generated an unusual major severe weather outbreak from the U.S. Storm Prediction Center. The storms moved across the ground at an extraordinary speed of 50 miles an hour. Described the UFO being as big as a ball with a yellow ray and a bright reddish color in the center. They also said the object was flying at a very low altitude and emitted yellow rays. The Iranian news agency FNA also reported a UFO crash last week. FNA reports the crash was followed by an explosion and a thick spiral of smoke. Now, that was mentioned by Whitley yesterday. We don't get any more than that. It just shuts down. Now, if it had been American, something, well, then obviously they'd be jumping up and down. We'd see it on every newscast, as Whit pointed out last night. We certainly would. We're going to go to open lines, unscreened open lines, in a moment. So here are the relevant numbers. West of the Rockies, 800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, 1-800-825-5033. First-time callers, we love you. Area code 818-501-4721. Wild card line, folks, and we have many of those. Good possibility of getting in. Area code 818-501-4109. And if you're outside the country, get hold of your operator and tell her you want to call toll-free 800-893-0903. British physicist Stephen Hawking, who authored the best-selling book A Brief History of Time, will soon experience a brief history with weightlessness. Hawking, who of course uses a wheelchair and is almost completely paralyzed by Lou Gehrig's disease, plans to go on a weightless flight on April 26th. The flight, operated by Zero Gravity Corporation at Fort Lauderdale, Florida-based tourism and entertainment company, will take off and return to a landing strip at the Kennedy Space Center. As someone who has studied gravity, black holes, all my life, I'm very excited to experience firsthand weightlessness and a zero-gravity environment. I was recently contacted by a very good friend of mine who asked if I'd be interested in giving that a try. I think I am. This is a pretty interesting story. You know that I love stories about holes in the ground. A drill will be used to extract samples of the exposed mantle